Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. Bethany Decker was a star student at George Mason University in Virginia and the loving mother to a little boy. But just months before she was set to graduate college, she disappeared. Her family reported her missing on February 19th of 2011. Police searched Bethany's apartment and began investigating her disappearance. Bethany's husband was in the military, but he was in town and one of the last people to see Bethany alive. While Bethany and her husband's marriage was supposedly fraught, he was eventually ruled out as a suspect. But her husband wasn't the only man in her life. Bethany began a relationship with a man named Ronald Roldan, whom she met through work. She also was several months pregnant. Police investigated Ronald, but the case eventually went cold. In 2014, Ronald was arrested for shooting his then-girlfriend, Vicki Willoughby, and he pleaded guilty. At one point in their relationship, Ronald allegedly told Vicki that he could, quote, make people disappear. 4 years later, in 2020, prosecutors announced that they were charging Ronald with abduction and second-degree murder of Bethany. He was denied bond, and his trial is scheduled to begin in January of 2023. Bethany's body has never been found. Now let's look back at the case involving an ambitious mother whose life was taken all too soon.
Bethany is the oldest of my children, and she's born in Hawaii, so I call her my flip-flops and lip gloss girl.
Bethany Ann Decker was finally seeing the light at the end of a long road.
Extremely great student. She did very well in high school. She graduated with over a 4.0.
The 22-year-old was just a few credits shy of graduating from George Mason University with a degree in global environmental change. It seemed her studies by day and hard work as a waitress at night were about to pay off.
What she looked at was wanting to change the world in a positive way.
With Bethany away at college, at first it didn't worry her mother, Kim Nelson, that she hadn't communicated with her daughter in over 3 weeks.
What was her phone doing? Was it just going to voicemail?
Her phone was going to voicemail, and we didn't realize at the time that nobody had been hearing from her, during that entire time. Like, we had each been contacting her but hadn't heard back.
But one weekend morning, Kim received a number of strange and foreboding phone calls. Some of Bethany's friends had noticed unusual posts on her Facebook page.
It was a Saturday morning, and I had messages from 4 different people from different parts of the country that said, there's somebody on Facebook that's on Bethany's login, but it's not Bethany. It didn't sound like Bethany, didn't use terms that Bethany would use. What's going on? Is there something wrong?
Kim's heart sank. She immediately called her own parents, asking them to check on Bethany since they lived closer to her Ashburn, Virginia apartment.
They actually drove there, and they noticed that Bethany's car was parked crooked. It had a flat tire. It was dusty. And they had been by the week before, and it wasn't like that. And so they were really concerned. It was unusual.
The unused car was a clue that something clearly wasn't right. A knock at her door soon proved that Bethany was nowhere to be found.
That's when I said, call the police.
Investigators swarmed the complex, interviewing neighbors, friends, and family. But 3 weeks had passed since Bethany had been seen. Only her car was left behind.
The vehicle was searched, and there was nothing leading us to any location that she might be at or where it might have gone.
Yeah, they went, opened up the apartment. The apartment was empty, except for just a bag of her clothes.
There were no signs of foul play or a physical altercation. Her bank cards had not been used, and interviews with neighbors yielded nothing.
They had search teams out, dogs. Subsequent to that, they looked into dumpsters to see if there was any human remains.
Bethany had literally disappeared without a trace.
When he asked me the question, do you think your daughter's in danger? I said, yes, I think she's in danger.
She's reported missing on February 19th, 2011 by her grandmother.
21 days after she was last seen.
As As investigators dug into Decker's mysterious disappearance, they learned Bethany was living on her own, but married to Emil Decker, a fellow student she had met at the university.
What did you learn initially?
We looked at her husband, who was actually on active duty with the, I believe it was the National Guard. He was in Afghanistan during a period of time.
The couple had a toddler son who was living with Kim, giving Bethany the time to attend school.
Kai, you playing with your Elmo toy?
He's really just an amazing little boy who has a lot of his mom in him.
But long before Bethany disappeared, her mother claims the marriage with Emil had encountered serious problems when he deployed.
They did have some difficulties and he was gone.
Kim believes Bethany was trying to repair the relationship. In fact, Emil was back on leave from his service overseas, and the two had recently taken a trip together. According to police, Emil had seen Bethany the day before she disappeared.
At some point, did you ever think that Emil had something to do with this?
He was, as a family member, he was her husband. He was still legally married to her and had seen her shortly before she was last seen.
And realizing direct message posts were made from her private Facebook account after her disappearance.
We're not so sure she was posting them.
Who do you think was posting it?
It had to have someone that had, her account access.
Police needed to determine if Emil could be responsible in any way for Bethany's disappearance.
I just want to give a lovely shout out to my wife who lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and to my son, Kai. I love you and I miss you very much.
But as detectives peered inside Bethany's inner circle, they soon uncovered secrets and dark clues that pointed in two different directions. While Emil was deployed, Bethany had met another man named Ronald Roldan in a local restaurant where they both worked.
What were Bethany and Ronald at the time?
Bethany and Ronald were in a relationship and were living together.
Now, as police investigated further, they wondered, did a love triangle hold any clues to her disappearance? The very question raised more frightening details about Bethany's double life.
He was very abusive. It was unbelievable how Bethany would be involved in something like that.
Bethany Decker was a vibrant, successful student, adored by family and her best friends from high school.
One of the things I was attracted to her was her sense of humor. She was always laughing about everything. She was always a very loving person, very intelligent, and she was very driven, go-getter.
But everyone in Bethany's circle was utterly shocked and terrified when the hard-working college student vanished without a trace from her Virginia apartment 4 years ago.
I'm sorry, I didn't think I was gonna do this.
Bethany and Emil Decker's marriage had been rocky, and immediately after her disappearance, police honed in on Emil.
Bethany Decker's husband was polygraphed.
Emil categorically denied having anything to do with her disappearance and cooperated fully with investigators.
We polygraphed family members, people that she associated with, anybody that might have been in contact with her on the last day she was seen.
And it's just as important to rule people out as it is to get persons of interest.
When he passed the polygraph test and offered a strong alibi, who confirmed his whereabouts in the hours Bethany went missing, detectives soon turned to another name.
And the last person to admit to seeing her was Ronald Roldan.
He admitted that?
Yes.
With her marriage in trouble and her husband away, the 22-year-old Bethany found herself in a complex relationship with another man named Ronald Roldan. She was 3 months pregnant, and it wasn't clear whose baby she was carrying given her recent marital problems.
He was gone. She met Ronald, I think it was a very vulnerable time. She did not plan on being in a relationship with Ronald nor staying in a relationship with him. Things turned bad pretty much from the beginning.
Kim says when she first met him, Roldan seemed charming, but Bethany's friends and family learned he had quickly turned possessive, even dangerous.
He was very abusive. It was unbelievable how Bethany would be involved in something like that, and so traumatic.
She had to constantly be checking in or sending pictures from where she was. He was very controlling and abusive, not only physically but emotionally. And so it was a very bad situation that she was in.
No one had had contact with her.
And detectives discovered more. Bethany was desperately trying to safely get away from Roldan. The attempt had been a frightening ordeal.
She had told us that they weren't really together, but he refused to leave. But then he wouldn't let her leave either.
Bethany had confided in her mother all the troubled details of the now violent affair.
She had said that there was a time where he had thrown her across the room and against a wall. He had threatened her with car keys, that he would cut her open. You know, when we said, just walk away from whatever it is, just walk away. And she's like, no, he'll never let it go. He'll find me.
On the day Bethany vanished, Roldan was admittedly the last person to see her.
We believe she was in her apartment in Ashburn, and because she had made a commitment to work that evening. So the people at her job did speak to her, and they verified that.
Unfortunately, Bethany didn't make her shift.
Ronald initially had cooperated with police to tell them that he had seen her that day in the afternoon before she was supposed to have gone to work, and she never showed up.
In the weeks following Bethany's disappearance, police went looking for Roldan and found him living at his mother's home.
He did initially cooperate to some degree.
At a certain point, he cut them off. He stopped cooperating.
As police looked into Roldan's life, they found an angry biography loaded with chapters of aggression.
Ronald, what do you know about him?
He does have a little bit of a pattern of abusing his girlfriends. There's more than one that has been assaulted by him. Very bad control freak with some of his female companions.
But with no physical evidence, no body, no clues as to Bethany's whereabouts, police were at a loss.
Ronald Roldan is certainly a person of interest in this investigation.
But there was no way for police to connect the dots and make an arrest. Within months, Ronald Roldan left town. The case went ice cold.
What kind of void has been left in your lives?
When Kai was like, where's mommy? To have to tell him that I don't know where his mom is very heartbreaking. And heartbreaking as a mom, not knowing where my daughter is.
Kim held out hope she would one day see her daughter again. Then, in a shocking twist, information about Ronald Roldan posted on Facebook sent chills to Kim's very core.
What did it say?
It said that there had been an altercation and that Ronald had shot Vicki, and that
his
girlfriend, and that she was in the hospital in critical condition.
It was a shocking piece of news traveling the viral pages of Facebook.
It just took me back to those accounts of violence and about what Bethany was trying to get away from.
Ronald Roldan, the man who had last seen Bethany Decker the day she disappeared in Virginia, had been arrested in North Carolina for the attempted murder of his latest girlfriend, Vicki Willoughby. The horrifying details of abuse and possessiveness held a striking similarity to Bethany's story. This is Vicki now, and it's a miracle she's alive to talk to Crime Watch Daily.
He used to have what I called outbursts out of nowhere, rages of anger, and they would literally come out of nowhere.
One too many outbursts and then physical abuse had convinced Vicki to leave. But one November night, her plan to move on for good almost got her killed.
What happened on that Tuesday?
He came towards me in the living room, never said a word. He took my laptop and my phone out from in front of me, laid those aside. He grabbed me at the top of my hair and just started plummeting me with his right fist. Immediately snapped my neck, because that's the first thing I felt go. I felt it and I heard it.
With a broken neck, Vicki crawled to a nearby chair where she had hidden a gun.
I had such a fear Ronald was going to kill me. So that night, for some reason, I had two guns. One was under the dog bed, and one was in the chair in front of me.
She managed to reach it. But after shooting Roldan twice, he was able to grab the gun from her and fire his own rounds. One grazed her arm, the other a direct hit to her head where the bullet stayed lodged.
After he shot me, I laid down for a moment. I stayed where I was because I thought I was gonna die.
But she didn't, and the horror wasn't over. When Roldan left the room, Vicki managed to flee out the front door. She ran, desperately looking for help from neighbors.
I was afraid to knock on any doors because if Ronald was behind me, he would have heard me. So that's why I was running around ringing everybody's doorbells.
When police arrived, Ronald Roldan was arrested and soon charged with 3 felony counts: assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, assault inflicting serious bodily injury, assault on a female.
He's a bad man and he's done bad things. And I talked about Bethany immediately because I needed them to all be aware that this was not a normal circumstance.
In the weeks that followed, Vicki contacted Kim Nelson by phone. After her ordeal, Vicki believed Ronald could have been responsible for Bethany's disappearance.
She told me that she really wants, and through all of this, to help be a voice for Bethany.
She shared with me from her ICU bed that she wanted people to know that there's somebody else, that you have to find Bethany. I just could not believe that.
Vicki and Kim had never met in person, but now, for the first time, Crime Watch Daily brings them together to share their mutual stories.
Hi.
Oh, I'm so glad to meet you.
You too.
You are so amazing,
Thanks.
so strong.
Thanks.
Ronald Roldan would soon face trial in the Vicki Willoughby attempted murder case. He has pleaded not guilty. In the Decker case, there is still no physical or circumstantial evidence that links Ronald Roldan. Investigators attempted once again to interview him after his arrest.
He wasn't cooperative. He listened to what I had to say and then basically asked me to speak to his attorney.
Do you feel in your heart that he has information that he's not shared with you?
Well, he hasn't cooperated fully, and in my experience, people that have something to hide behind their attorneys.
Crime Watch Daily found Roldan being held in a North Carolina jail.
Hi, Ronald.
We also tried to speak with him through a closed-circuit video about Bethany, but once again, he shunned any questions.
Ronald, is there anything you would like to say about Bethany's case?
Look, please don't contact me again. I said, please do not contact me again.
If there's anybody out there that has information about where Bethany is, I want the opportunity to be able to tell her that I love her.
And now, Bethany's mother, Kim, hopes if anyone has information that can lead to her whereabouts, they will come forward.
What is your message to them?
I want them to know that I love my daughter more than anything. I want to protect her. I'm her mom. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.